energy payments, energy crises, and emergency furnace repair. They also offer referrals to the Home Weatherization Program. More information about how to apply at 651 645 6470 or at caprw.org.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them and are not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Tuesday, beautiful Tuesday, maybe one of the best we'll have for a while. I understand that inclement weather is headed our way, but it's been a wonderful, warm summer, a good summer, a great fall, and I'm grateful for it. We want to welcome to the program colleagues, friends, associates, and community from North Memorial Health. Melody Smaller is here, I believe, and also I see Kentrell Galloway. Kentrell Galloway is the program manager of the Next Step program at North Memorial. He's an experienced program manager with a long history of providing support for children and families. He's joined the Next Step program to help people in their darkest moments. He facilitates the program's creative approach to making connections with those in need, between those in need and those who have resources and support. And the goal is to reduce the overall violence in our community. And I am pleased to welcome Melanie. She was here a second ago. She'll be back in a second, I guess. Andrea, I see you there. Hi, Andrea. How are you? Andrea. Yeah. So I don't know if you're going to be on the program today. In the program, you are our facilitator.
No, I want the back. I'm the background just because I.
Okay, great. Well, that was Andrea Weinrab. She's my partner in organizing this program. Andrea, thank you for helping create these wonderful conversations. I do know that Melanie was here a second ago and was trying to get online, so maybe she'll get back on in a second. But before she comes on, let me say that we do have a third partner in the group, and that's the conversation following my first one is going to be with Jetta from Trellis. I think it is Jetta Wiedemeyer Bauer, and she's with the program to help people navigate their Medicare. So it's an important topic. Now I see Melanie is back again. Melanie, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm great. Good to see you
Sorry
again.
about my technical difficulties.
Well, you know what happens. It's okay. This is an informal program. It's a fun program. Our goal here, Melanie and Kentrell, is to have plain, simple, everyday, regular conversation. This is a conversation with Al McFarlane, and I hope that this conversation, like all of them, end up being a benefit to you as a person with ideas and values and resources you want to share with our listeners, of benefit to the listeners and to the viewers on social media. And I can tell you it'll be a benefit for me because I enjoy meeting beautiful people with energy and with a positive message for the community. And I enjoy creating content for our social media platforms. We're here obviously on KFAI Live Radio. This is an awesome platform and network for reaching people in our community, for building community. We're here on the McFarlane Media dashboard, our social media networks, including Facebook Live. And we're also here on a national level through our affiliation with the Black Press of America. Black Press USA is a social media platform for the National Newspaper Publishers Association. My company, Insight News, is an active member in that, and I've been a director of it at various levels over the years, and I'm a proud member of the Black Press of America. So we use all of these modalities, these platforms, to create information, to share information, and to hopefully leave our viewers and listeners with an idea that as a community, despite the challenges, despite the threats, we're going to be okay. We're going to be all right, and we're going to get through this. And so for that and with that, I really, again, want to thank you, Melanie, and thank you, Kentrell, for being here. And my guest at the bottom part of the hour Jetta Wiedemeyer Bauer. I'll thank her in advance as well. So Melanie focuses on caring for trauma patients with orthopedic injuries from admission through discharge at North Memorial Health. She serves as a liaison between the hospital's trauma professionals, patients who have experienced violent injury, and the Next Step team to help patients and their families get the care and resources they need. So the obvious question for you, Melanie, and for you, Kentrell, what is the Next Step program? Why is it called that? What's North Memorial Health's role in the Next Step program? Melanie?
Yeah, thanks. So I'll let Conchal give a little more background on the Next Step program maybe first, and then I can
Sure.
kind of interweave how we work together with them at North Memorial.
Kentrell?
Yeah. The Next Step program is a hospital-based violence intervention program that began between a partnership between the city of Minneapolis and HCMC, Hennepin Healthcare, where I am currently based out of and who I work for. So that initiative started in 2016 when the city approached the hospital and they made that collaboration to start the violence intervention program that is hospital-based. When they started doing that work, they started realizing shortly that they were missing a lot of folks who were also going to the other level 1 trauma hospital, which was North Memorial. So then in 2018, the program expanded over to North Memorial, and they also got more funding through the state of Minnesota Office and Justice programs. So they were able to make the expansion over to North Memorial Hospital. And it started off as a youth-based program. It had an age limit of 12 to 29, serving youth who were victims of violent crimes. And then I joined the team at the end of 2019, of December of 2019. I came from St. Joseph's Home for Children that was over in South Minneapolis, where I was one of the program managers over there. So when I joined the team in 2019 of December, right before the pandemic hit, we still had that age limit on. Then once the pandemic hit, we started seeing a trend of people who were outside of our age limit who were coming into the hospital who were victims of violent crimes, especially, the gunshots. So that's when we made a decision to get rid of the age limit and start helping anyone who came into the 2 emergency departments. And also at that time, Abbott Northwestern started to see that their penetrated trauma numbers started to increase. So they reached out to us, and then again in a partnership with the city, we were able to expand over to Abbott Northwestern. So now we serve those 3 main hospitals. So anyone who's a victim of a violent crime that comes through the emergency departments at any 3 of those hospitals, someone from my team will meet them there and figure out what happened to them, and then started trying to provide service to them so they can take, when you asked about the name, the next step, so they can start the recovery and reassimilation back into the community.
Okay, so Melanie, go ahead and talk about your role in particular.
Sure. So for my role specifically, I'm the manager of the trauma program here at North Memorial. And so Conchal and I work closely together to make sure that things run as seamlessly as possible for these customers that we see with that experience these penetrating traumas. And so really how it works is once a victim comes into the hospital, essentially we alert the Next Step team members that are on call immediately. And our team in the ER does that. And then Next Step is notified, and they come to meet the patients and the families and just kind of help as soon as they can to, while we as the medical providers are providing the medical care that they need, they can kind of help bridge that gap with this trauma, the trauma to our community, the trauma to this family, and kind of start that process, if you will, with whatever their needs are at that time. So that's kind of where we feel that having Next Step involvement in the hospital is crucial, because they really bridge that gap that we had been missing with kind of crossing over from just providing that medical attention that people need, but actually getting them meeting all of their needs and helping them get back out into the community in the best way possible.
So it's kind of like a wraparound service, right, or resource?
Sure. Yep, and they follow them the whole time they're in the hospital and after they leave the hospital. So they work with our staff in the emergency department, up on our trauma floors, the ICUs, and then continue to work with the patients and families after they leave the hospital as well.
Maybe Cantrell said this, but did you all approach Hennepin County, or did they approach you? How did that connection come about?
I actually was not in this role at that time when that started, so I don't know if you know the answer to that, Contrell.
I believe like I said, when they figured out that they were missing half of the population.
So no, Cantrell, you need to use either some headsets or something because you're getting echo. Maybe if you had headsets and not use your other speaker because I'm getting an echo. That would, and a microphone if you have it part of your headset.
Let me see if this works.
Sounds better already.
Can you hear me? Is that better?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah,
Okay.
Are you able to hear us okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. Go ahead, yeah.
So when the collaboration realized that they were missing half of the population, they reached out to North Memorial in 2018 and started that collaboration process. And I believe at the time, the president, Jeff Wickerland, was also interested in doing something too of hospital-based intervention. So it was just a good timing on both parts.
So let me ask some more specific questions. Exactly how the programs work. Kind of walk me through a day of your work, Kentrell, and a day of yours, Melody, to show what the intersections are, how you both in your capacities embrace, connect, guide victims of violence towards recovery, healing, and reintegration into the community. Kentrell, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so my team is the people who respond. So what happens is we'll get an alert from one of the hospitals saying that someone is eligible for the program. So we then will respond to the emergency department and what we call the stabilization room, right as they're coming in. And the trauma team is doing medical procedures to either save their life or patch up their wounds to stabilize the patient.
So let's do a scenario just to make it plain and kind of make it real, though it's imaginary. Somebody gets shot on the corner of Broadway and Lindale in North Minneapolis, some kind of a shootout between the highs and the lows. And then as a consequence, one or two people end up being brought to North Memorial. Maybe others are taken down to HCMC. But now we've got a situation that we're too familiar with. And you get a call from the hospital saying, we've got people here who have been involved in gun violence. And then what do you do?
So then we respond to that. We come into the hospital. We go into the stabilization room where we meet the patient. Once they're stabilized, we start asking them, what happened to them, who's coming up to check on them, to see who their support system is. And then we start working with the patient to make sure that they're feeling comfortable at the hospital so that they allow the providers to, provide the work to them, because sometimes patients show up and they don't trust the system, so they don't be as forthcoming or, sometimes are hesitant to get the help. So we try to bridge that gap. Also, then working with the families who show up to the hospital, making sure that they are informed about what's happening with their loved ones. Also helping with the grieving process and making sure people are okay so that they don't go back out in the community to retaliate on folks because somebody did something to their loved one. So try to de-escalate that situation too. Mm-hmm. And then also, like I said, we just start asking people what happened to them, how we can be helpful, what resources do they feel like they're going to need when they reassimilate back into the community because their life has changed. Life is not going to be the same now for them. So how can we help them find some coping tools and community supports so that they are able to go back out in the community? And sometimes, that might be a family that, like you said, they got shot up on a corner and they can't live in that area anymore. Like, I don't feel safe living in that area no more. We might have to figure out how we can relocate them. Or they might say, well, I'm involved in this because I don't have any other means of making money. So we can figure out, hey, can we get them involved in the trade? Is there some type of educational support they need? Job training. So it's just little things like that. Or, people who are injured say, I'm working, but I can't work now because I got shot. So what am I going to do in the meantime? So we can help out that way, help out with a mortgage payment here and there for food, clothes, paying some energy bills, just so that they can make it too, so they can start getting back on their feet.
It's amazing. That's a lot. It's complex as well. Melanie, why don't you take up from there, from your point of view as the hospital, as the health center, how does the scenario unfold?
Sure. So as a victim comes in and we realize they're a victim of penetrating trauma, violent crime, then our team in the emergency department notifies, sends out a page to the Next Step team, and in which they essentially take it from there. They come in, meet with the patients and their families, and kind of help while, these are often chaotic situations and very time-sensitive situations from a medical standpoint. We need to do a lot of interventions very quickly, potentially go to the operating room, go to the ICU, things like that. So it kind of allows us to continue doing that care, and then having that support with the Next Step team to also be meeting all the other needs of the patient. We don't want to forget them, but often our focus and our training is kind of pointed in a different direction, especially early on. But really the Next Step team, then they follow through, say the patient's admitted to the hospital, whether they're on our trauma floor or in our ICU. The Next Step team comes and visits them daily. They check in with the nursing staff. They check in with our case management team to see if there's things that we're finding or that might be needs for them, or, kind of just working as a team to make sure we're covering all the bases for these customers so that they are getting all of their needs met as much as possible.
I'm Al McFarlane. You're listening to Conversations with Al McFarlane, my guest today. You just heard the voice of Melanie R. Smalley. She's the trauma program manager at North Memorial Health, and also Kentrell Galloway. Kentrell, am I pronouncing it the right way? Emphasis on the second syllable?
Yep, Kentrell.
Kentrell, okay, I got it. Thank you. Kentrell Galloway is a program manager of the Next Step program. And this is a fascinating collaboration originating out of the city of Minneapolis, but involving North Memorial, I think the Abbott system, and Hennepin County Medical Center, all of three working to respond to and provide solutions to victims of gun violence, or violence, not just gun violence, but in the community, that show up in the hospital. And a coordinated, planful strategy that goes beyond just the intervention and the reaction to the physical violence trauma, but how do the institutions work together to take sort of a restorative path, chart a restorative path for the victim, because as Cantrell said, that person's life changes forever with an incident like this. And so, I wanted to ask you, Melanie, how you see the role of hospitals or healthcare systems evolving as the need to combat and respond to violence in our communities increases. We're in a different and difficult place. I think that I do these shows every week, several days a week, actually. And what's common in all of my shows is that people are experiencing violence and the threat of violence all day, every day, and almost anywhere in our cities, but around the country as well. And so there's a different energy around, and the threat of being a victim is real for a lot of people. And so traditional, hospitalization or healthcare is not sufficient for the experience that we have today. And your company, North Memorial, among others, has been a leader in evolving to react to, respond to be present in the new reality. And so what's the philosophy behind North Memorial's involvement, not just North Memorial, but hospital industry, health industry? How is it changing in terms of how it looks at its role in the question of violence in the community?
Thanks, Al. Yeah, that's a complex question, right? I mean, we have never seen numbers like we started seeing in 2020 and now in 2021 with the violent crimes at the hospital. And I think we acknowledge here at North Memorial that we want to do more. There's a need to break down that barrier between, the hospital walls and the community, and that just fixing people's injuries isn't helping the overall problem, and we want to be more of a part of the solution. And I think that engaging in more and more of these partnerships like we are with Next Step and the city of Minneapolis, that hopefully we can find more ways, think outside of the box, and kind of cross that barrier of just the walls of the hospital, and how we can link to the community even further. So we're always meeting, talking, and trying to evolve and trying to pull in team that involve community members now, and just lots of different programs that we can do to expand our reach in the community, in our community that we're serving. So we don't have all the answers yet, obviously, but that's what we're working towards, is really breaking down those barriers and linking the inside of the hospital with everyone in the community, so that we are making a difference.
And Contrell, you came out of youth work, right, before you got into this. Is that correct? Is that what you said at the beginning of the program?
Yeah, youth work, child protection, St. Joseph's Home for Children. If you know where it used to be over in South Minneapolis, I was one of the directors over there.
Okay, and so you didn't come out of hospital care, but you came out of care for families and children. And from your point of view, from that profession and track, what have you seen as the change in the industry, in the healthcare industry? How has the industry been able to reassess what it is and what it should be doing, and how it can and should have greater impact in solving the problem? Not just, and not to minimize it, because it's important to get a wound stitched up, a bullet removed from the body, a broken bone mended. But what Melanie is saying, I believe, is that now the institutions are saying, really, we're doing more than that, and that healing includes that, but it's not just that. So from where you stand, how have you seen the industry change over the past several years, and where do you see it going?
It's changing because I think providers now are interested more of the holistic care of their patients, not just the physical patient, but also learning how do people heal socially, emotionally, and mentally. So I think a lot of more focus has been put on that, and why. Instead of blaming people for returning to the hospital, now figuring out why they're returning to the hospital. Instead of saying, you need to do this, they're now saying, what happened to you? So I think that's a huge shift. Usually the providers will just stitch them up and then put them back into the environment. Now you see people are now more interested in what's happening out in folks' environment that's causing all of this to take place. So I think that's one shift that's taking place. It's a slow shift, but it's taking place. And then also looking internally and seeing what are the systemic racist barriers that we as ourselves as an institution is placing on our patients when they're coming into into the hospital. How can we change some of that so our patients feel more trusted and more feel more value when they come in to get care?
Great. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. My guests are talking about the Next Step program. It's a program that is in North Memorial Health and other hospital institutions as well. My guests are Melanie Smalley, the trauma program manager at North Memorial Health, and Contrell Galloway, program manager of the Next Step program. And so, guys, what are you hopeful that as this program advances, what will happen? What I think the times suggest that the services you're providing are needed, and more of them are needed. What do you see as the future, short-term and long-term? Contrell, I'll start with you.
Some of the things I hope is that, it's got to start with policy changes, because, as a society, we have normalized some of this, and we've accepted to live the way we're living. We have to, get our leaders who are leading to change some of the policies that we are having right now. Some of this is policy driven. And as for the program grows, I just want to make that we have the bandwidth to address some of the complex issues that we're facing in our community. Everything can't just fall on one program's shoulders, because that just won't work. It has to be a holistic community approach to address some of our complex issues, and it's going to take time.
Melanie, where do you see it going? What do you think?
Well, I see us really growing, again, our connection with the community and different community. There's a lot of community resources, and there's the hospital, and I think that we really just need all of those things to interconnect so that we are all on the same page and connecting and working towards the same common goal. I'd like to see us work Contrell out of a job and ourselves, but where we're making enough progress where we're actually turning these numbers around. That's what my ultimate goal would be. And I think from a system standpoint, we don't want to have to take care of these patients every day. It isn't a fun job, and it's terrible for our community to be going through this. And so we want to see more of a connection between ourselves and the community members, where we are helping to heal and prevent.
Yeah. And so guys, given this commitment that you're both expressing, your organizations express, what should the community understand? What should listeners, readers of Insight News know about this program and about the mission it represents? Melanie, what do you think?
Well, I would just want the community to know that we're trying, and we're continually trying every day to get better as a system, and that our customers and our community come first, and that's what we're here for. And so we're always open to suggestions. We're always trying to get feedback on what we can do better, because that's our ultimate goal, is to continue to provide that unmatched customer service for everyone in our community.
And Contrell, same question to you. What do you want people to know about Next Step and the mission? How can the community both become more knowledgeable and therefore more supportive, and enable you to be more responsive as you desire to be?
I would say that we're agents of change. We want to break that generational cycle of violence. So people feel more value. We can bring more value to our lives, so we're not having so many high numbers of folks, victims of violent crimes. And also, again, changing the community for the better. So we're not just, again, healing folks in the hospital and putting them back in the same setting. We're truly changing the environment that people are living in, so that they feel safe, they feel more connected to their community.
Let me ask you a personal story, brother. Where are you from? Are you North Side or South Side? Are you Twin Cities person, or where are you from?
No, I'm not from the Twin Cities at all. I'm from a combination of Texas and Iowa.
How did you come to this work that you're doing?
So growing up, my dad, once he got out of the military, had his own little organization with wrestling in Iowa. So he used to just take all the kids, especially if you know anything about wrestling back in about 15 years ago, it was not many black people out there wrestling. So,
right.
So my dad, that was his thing. And he got all the underprivileged kids.
He was a wrestler? Your dad was a wrestler?
Well, my dad was in the military, but he loved wrestling. So he forced it on us, but but it was a good thing, because myself and all my brothers are state champions. So
really,
it was so my dad took all the underprivileged kids, or kids who were struggling in school, or kids who were from single home parents who needed that father figure. Because I am an anomaly, I believe, because my dad raised me as a single parent, so that's you usually don't hear that. So my dad raised me and my brother, so he would take in all the young men and girls who needed help, and he would just start helping them out. And he just did it out of the kindness of his heart to give back to his community, because he's seen the kids who look like him struggling. So that was his way of helping. So that's kind of how I got involved in it. And then, my uncle and my aunt are all there. My aunt is from the Twin City, Desiree Galloway. She's really involved in the community. So that's how I got up here.
Well, she's one of the lion-hearted leaders in our community. She's a legendary asset and beloved for her work and her presence in community.
Yep. So that's how I'm up here now, and I'm just following in their steps.
Okay. What's your training?
Huh?
What's your training? How did you train for this career?
Oh, so I got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice, so that's how I started off. And then I worked in a couple residential facilities, and then again I worked for Ramsey County Child Protection for about 10 years, and then went back and ran St. Joe's for the last 8 years before I took over at this job.
Okay, Melanie, what's your story? Personal story? How did you come to the work?
Well, I've actually been at North Memorial for 17 years. I started as a baby. I started as a nurse on the trauma floor, and I just kind of fell in love with it. And then I went to our trauma neuro ICU as a nurse as well, and then started with working for the trauma program and became a nurse practitioner. And so I was taking care of trauma patients across the hospital as a provider, and then just recently began in the manager role for the trauma program here at the beginning of the summer. So kind of just graduating through the trauma process here at North Memorial, and just have always had a passion for it and helping people. And so I'm hoping to make even more of a difference now in this manager role when I get to connect more with all these different programs and community members and et cetera. So.
Well, let me say kudos to North Memorial. First of all, it's a great organization, a great asset in the community. I think our community feels a sense of equity and a sense of ownership of North Memorial. People, refer to it as our hospital, just as they refer to HCMC, a stellar research and service organization, Hennepin County Medical Centers. We've got great assets, great resources in the community, and North Memorial certainly is at the top of the class in that regard. Thank you both for that. Now I'm going to expand the program a little bit, pivot to my next guest, but I want to invite both of you to stick around as long as you're able to. If you have to leave, that's fine, but you're welcome to hang out and listen to the conversation with my friends from Trellis, Jetta Wiedemeyer Bauer. And maybe if you're still here, we can come back and just make another statement, concluding statement, inviting people to support, be aware of what you're doing at the wonderful program at Next Step for HCMC and North Memorial program. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. I want to bring on my next guest. Her name is Jetta Wiedemeyer Bauer, and she's the Trellis Outreach and Volunteer Manager. Jetta, how you doing?
Thanks so much for having me, Al. I appreciate being here.
Well, thank you for being here. Like everybody else, people my age are getting a gazillion emails and robocalls and mail on top of mail saying you've got till December 7th to make a decision about your Medicare program and options. And quite frankly, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming to me, and I call myself fairly, informed, and I'm a good reader and I understand the language, but I'll be doggone if I don't feel like I'm getting snowed. And so, and if I'm feeling that way, I feel sorry for the ordinary, person who, just might not be as equipped as I am, really, to dig through stuff like this. So you've got a program that tries to help people get through this maze of information and to come to informed decisions without feeling like they're being, railroaded or bamboozled or made to just throw their hands up and take whatever is left after, a cursory look. Talk about what you do.
Yeah.
Am I describing this situation properly? First of all.
Absolutely. I took a sick day a couple weeks ago, and I never take a sick day. And I put myself in front of the TV, and I, after hours, thought, holy buckets, there's a lot of commercials and things hitting our phones, things hitting the email. And I mean, at a certain point, it's just background noise and you just want to turn it off. So you definitely nailed it right, because we are in open enrollment. So I'll take a step back. I work at Trellis, and Trellis is a nonprofit organization here in the Twin Cities, and we provide services and information and connections to people as they age. And Trellis has been around for about 27 years in the organization. And our whole goal is to assist individuals to age successfully, but also to develop the capacity of communities to deal with an aging community. And, we are designated as an area agency on aging here in the Twin Cities, from the federal government down to the state government. And that means that we're giving resources away under the Older Americans Act. Last year, we gave $14 million to our community partners. But it also means that we partner with the Senior Linkage Line. So we sit in partnership with the state of Minnesota, the Board on Aging, and we provide Senior Linkage Line services. And, things like Medicare counseling. We work with individuals every day, and they get these things in their mail that really sound too good to be true. And my mama always said, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. So the difference between Trellis and some of the other organizations, they might be licensed insurance agents or licensed brokers or whatnot, is that the Senior Linkage Line is completely objective. We do not employ folks who are real estate agents, insurance agents, brokers. We don't have a financial stake in the game. And so Medicare open enrollment started October 15th. It will go through December 7th. And this is our one opportunity through the year to make changes. And the neat thing is that you could change every year, and the plans change, slight changes here, slight changes there. And if we do some cost comparisons, we might actually be able to save some dollars down the road for our older adults who are pretty complicated. These are complicated situations. I mean, in Minnesota, for instance, there's 100 plans. I consider myself too to be an educated woman, but I tell you, at this point, I can spell the word Medicare. I don't ask me to make the changes, right? I'm going to go to my experts who sit in partnership with us. And Trellis just happens to be one of 6 organizations throughout the state of Minnesota. So if you happen to live in the Twin Cities, you might actually dial the lineup in Duluth if we have a real high call volume here in the Twin Cities. All of us work together to try to provide the best resources and referral information to older adults, but it also could be their granddaughter calling, because there may be more tech savvy and be able to provide assistance and care for our grandparents, or it might be an adult child that calls too. So anyone is welcome to call.
I can tell you that last year when enrollment was here, my wife and I were stressed. Purely, that's the best way to describe it, stressed at the choices we had to make. And so I ended up being up late at night sometimes trying to go through what I think in a methodical fashion, what the options are. But I never left feeling like I made the right choice, the right decision.
Right.
So it seems like I'm paying the government through Medicare. That's one. I think I'm paying the government, number one. And it says I get something Part A and Part D. Then it seems like I'm paying extra for Part D. Don't know what that is.
Right.
Then it seems like if I really want to get insured, though, I need to buy supplemental insurance. So I'm paying the people I've been with for a gazillion years about $400 a month, $300 a month for me and $300 for my wife. Then I'm paying again for dental, and then I'm paying separately for prescriptions.
Yeah.
Right. And the prescriptions wear me out because they tell me there's a donut or something. And so stuff that cost me $12 most of the time at a certain time of the year, it costs me $300,
Right.
$400, right?
Right.
And so there's this window where either I haven't met the deductible or I haven't met some condition. And until that's met, I got to pay a lot of money. Well, all of it together wears me out. I'm just being as plain as I can about it. And I pity the fool, who has to go through this like I do. I really do.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, let me let you in on a little secret, Al.
Yeah.
The volunteers that come into our world and the staff who we hire, they don't necessarily start with Medicare experience, but I tell you, it takes us between 6 months and a year to get them feeling completely comfortable with Medicare. And so, you are not falling behind the curve. But what I can help you with, and all the listeners, is that Medicare is a program where if folks call the senior linkage line, we'd have the opportunity to sit down. And like I said, there's 100 plans in Minnesota. We have the opportunity to look at our cost finder plans, Medicare.gov, MinnesotaHealth.info, look at all of the options that we have. And we're, behind the scenes, it's our computer tools that we're using, and sit down with you. And you could either choose to call the 1-800 number, 800-333-2433. You could go to the website, and each of the 6 organizations have their own website. Ours is trellisconnects.org. You can go on there and say, you know what? I need help, and I'm not ashamed to raise my hand, and I need help. You can make an appointment for a phone call, like at the time when you want it, not as opposed to hanging online and waiting for someone to pick up that phone, because sometimes during this year, our call eyes are big. Or you can go online and you can pick a location at one of 27 sites throughout the Twin Cities. So, and what we'll do is, if I would happen to be your counsel, I would sit with you. We'd have one appointment for you and one appointment for your wife in your situation. And I'd listen to what you wanted to talk about. Like, do you travel at all? Do you travel a couple months of the year? Kentrell said you were from Texas originally, or Iowa. Do you travel there? Do you have a preferred pharmacy that you like to use, or will you be willing to switch? Do you have a plan that you love, but you want to ask for a little bit of nuance changes? We're going to listen to what your lifestyle is. We're going to ask a couple questions. We're going to take 100 plans and hopefully bring it down to maybe 5 or 6 and say, okay, Al, these are the different pieces that we think I've heard that make sense for you. And then you get to take a look at them. And at the end of the day, you get to decide, you know what, I'm okay paying a little bit more here because I want this benefit. I don't want to pay that amount over here. And Medicare is, Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D. It's alphabet soup. And our volunteers and staff know how to, cook in the gumbo, right? They're able to figure it out for folks. And like, again, I don't make any financial benefits from it. I work with one of our volunteers. She has been with us for 6 years. She is, her name is Chris, and she worked with a couple, kind of like your family, right? A male and a female, but they had really different medical issues. And for years they were on the same plan. And Chris just started thinking about it. And at the end, they wanted to stay on the same plan, but they wanted to separate. They were willing to separate some pharmacy options. She worked with them and they saved over $100 a month. Now, that may not be true for every person, but I got done with that call with her, and she's giddy. She's like, woo! And I'm like, Chris, it's not your money. You realize it? And she said, no, but when I talked with them, they told me that they had grandkids out of state. And this means that an extra $100 on a very fixed income means that they can visit them. And the senior linkage line, our hope is to make everyone kind of a trusted friend so they can turn to us. And it may not be just Medicare. I mean, you may want to know about shore services. My dad's having a surgery in 2 weeks, and Lord knows that man goes out and scoops everyone's snow, and he does everyone's lawn, and he just can't do it now. And so I am looking through some options for him so that he doesn't do that. Or people who fall and they need education, or they need grab bars, those types of resources. The senior linkage line can step in any issue related to aging. We help people to do it with grace and dignity.
So like last year, after I struggled through and decided on the plan I took, I thought it was okay. Then when I get confronted at the pharmacy with costs that I didn't expect, I figured that's a bump. Maybe I just wasn't as informed as I should be.
Right.
I take myself, give myself, responsibility for that. And then this year, as the season evolves, I see the television commercials where they say, you could be paying little or nothing for care.
Right.
And you could be getting some money back where you're paying now. And so, I said, wait a minute. I'm paying not little or nothing. I'm paying a grip. I'm paying a lot. And I have been,
Right.
And I'm not complaining about paying it because I want to stay healthy. I'm willing to pay. I want to stay alive, right? I want to be here.
Right.
But if I can be here and keep my money in my pocket, that's so much better. So I called up and they tell me, the plan that I've had is one where, it's like either no or low deductible. I pay this premium of $300 a month and I go as often as I need to. And, I use the service, and so I'm glad I've got the insurance, and that's cool. But they're saying, depending on the number of times you go to your clinic, you might be cheaper paying the it's not the deductible, but the per visit charge.
Yeah.
So you could be paying $50 a visit.
Mhm.
And if you're visiting like 3 times a month,
Hmm.
150 versus the 300 you're paying right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, really?
And with
Oh,
one of our
really?
volunteers, we're going to sit down and, you're going to bring your Medicare card with you. You're going to bring
Yeah.
your private insurance if you have that. You're going to bring like your prescriptions, list them out. That's a great way to prepare for a visit. But you're
Mhm.
also going to bring maybe some statements of what happened during the last year. How many times did you go? How many
Mhm.
visits did you tap into? And we'll be able to put that into some, some formularies to say, okay, you've got these 100 plans, let's bring it down to 3 or 4. And then to say, okay, if you expect the same year to be like last year, just in terms of health and visits, and we don't know what the future is, but
Mhm.
if it's going to be similar to that, this plan may be a little bit cheaper for you, and you may pay a little bit more deductible and a little less in the copay, and then you can at least go into it with a little more information. And the neat thing is, if you meet one of our volunteers in the community or you do it over the phone, you have the opportunity to kind of go back and forth, and they may finish the visit and do a little research for you, and then kind of securely either send it to your home or email it through a very secure email system. And then we go back and forth and try to figure out, the pieces. We're in week 4 of week 7 of open enrollment. So the time is ticking, but we depend on volunteers to kind of help us with this work, because we got staff members all over the state, but our volunteers are members of the community who just, they've either retired and decided, I am not done. I want to learn something new that's challenging. And if Medicare isn't enough, I don't know what is. Or they just decided they want to give back. And so a lot of the work that we do is on the backs of really talented folks donating to their community.
Well, let me throw a wrinkle in the soup, a twist here. My feeling and my experience is that a lot of times white people line up and get to resources like this easily, quickly, and quietly.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the paradox. On the one hand, they will decry the government providing services and goods to ordinary people,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll create this story that shames Black people
Mm-hmm.
uh, from needing or using tools, resources that they themselves use and benefit from.
Mm-hmm.
And from my point of view, it's very selfish and mean spirited, where they both demonize you while they do the same thing. So they work these systems. I remember getting, for example, when the COVID shots came out, and I live in North Minneapolis, a neighborhood that had experienced,
Yeah.
more COVID impact and fewer people getting to the resources. But when I went to the clinic where I got my resource, what I found out, not only there, but other places, white people came in from the suburbs and across Twin Cities to get the resources available in North Minneapolis,
Right.
but they carry this double standard that wants to tell the public policy people that North Siders are working the system,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not. We're being shut out and
Yeah.
kept out of the system. So how does your program, with intention, reach people of color in general, Black people in particular, and what's been your experience in engaging our people on the solution side
Mm-hmm.
as well as the benefit side of this?
Yeah. I'm glad you
Big
opened that.
question. Yeah, sure.
Glad you opened that door.
Yeah.
I'm tickled at it simply because we know that folks who come to the senior linkage line are easy. They've found us in different populations in Egan and Edina and Eden Prairie. I have no problem finding individuals to come to us and we can help them. And for years, our organization, the senior linkage line, has served the white community really well. I joined the organization about 18 months ago, and I happen to grow up in a communities of color. I grew up in a family of color. And so I sit in 2 different worlds. And I looked around and realized that we have got to do a better job. And so we've been trying to reach out to communities. And one of the ways we've been doing it is to try to target our resources, right? We go out and we do educational presentations in the community. We do, Medicare counseling in the community. And if I look at the data, we have 27 sites throughout the Twin Cities, and most of them are the further ring suburbs, right? And I looked at the 27, and we've got 2 that sit in the inner city. So one of the first things we're doing is trying to look really consciously at how do we pull up a center, right? And what I need is, first I need commitment to the community. And like, I've gone to Rondo, right? They're with us. They want to be in community with us. We know we're going to go to North Point and North Minneapolis. They're going to be with us. But we need volunteers to set it up, because if I go into a community and I walk in there, I'm going to be joyful and intentional and warm and welcoming. But if they can see someone that looks like them, feels like them, speaks like them, they're going to feel better about getting that service. And so the first thing we've been doing is, in the last 6 months and last year, I've been hiring intentionally. So in the last year, we brought on someone who speaks Somali, who speaks Spanish, who speaks Hmong and speaks English and Swahili. So first, we're diversifying our staff so that folks feel and look like the community, so that the community will welcome them.
So, but I'm right in my assessment that wasn't the case before.
I think they tried very hard, but I can't speak for the organization or the state. I know that they, tried to angle marketing pieces, but I think you've got to have individuals in the organization that can tell you, no, that's not how we do it, right? We did a statewide Spanish presentation just last week, 2 weeks ago, and my staff person I brought on, I was talking about, okay, we're going to do marketing this way, and she's Jetta, we don't do that in my community. And I said, okay, tell me how you do it in the Spanish speaking community, right? And so I said, I'm going to do this so I can hit white world, right? But I said, tell me how you do it. Tell me how it's authentic. And we did that. And we put her on a radio station in La Jefe Radio, Minnesota. 1,500 people watched that video. We did it on Facebook Live. We'd never done that before. So I think, first you have to listen. Second, we've got to get volunteers to go into that community. And, for the last couple months, we have been making a very strident effort in Cedar Riverside. Incredibly diverse. We're trying to reach, I've got a new staff member who speaks Swahili and Somali, and we're trying to reach out to our existing partners there to help us, number one, bring volunteers who speak Oromo, Somali, and Amharic, so that we can be authentic, so that we can reach people in the language that they know best. And then we're trying to set up a pop-up in not this Friday, but next Friday on November 19th. We're going to be in Cedar Riverside in their community, talking with them in their own language about senior linkage line, and then offering them Medicare counseling. Our hope, Hal, is that we do this pop-up and we have this opportunity to give them a taste of what it might look like in their community. And then over the next year, I have the challenge of finding a volunteer who lives in that community or is willing to go in there, speaks the language, so that next year during open enrollment, they're talking to a trusted friend. They're talking to the person that lives there in their neighborhood. And I just recruited a volunteer named Hamza. And my hope is that Hamza can help us open these doors and say, let me help translate so that we can get this information, because everyone is entitled to healthcare information in their own language. So, we're working hard. We got a lot of room to grow, a lot of room for us to make some improvements. But our hope is that we change some language, we change some materials that are translated, we work on volunteers in the community, and individuals start to realize that they're welcome. I don't know about you. When I was a kid and we would do celebrations, it was always food and family and fun, right? And you figure this big dining room table, right? And that's the kind of metaphor I think of, is that when I was a kid, I wasn't on the dining room table. I was in the other room at the card table. Right. And that's kind of how it feels to me. And our hope is that the senior linkage line and trellis can create the dining room table and just make it a little bigger and add another chair and another chair, so that people are not only there and they feel welcome, but I can work with a company I translate into 140 different languages. Right. If that's not respect, I don't know what is. But if people feel like they're in the other room at a card table, they're not going to come forward. And that's going to just make folks feel bad about where they are. So it's one step at a time, Al. And I think we're trying to make some aggressive steps all at the same time. And right now we're in open enrollment and trying to get individuals to know that it's their right, it's their duty. And we hope that they come forward so that we can save them a lot of money.
Let's give some people some how to contact you or the organization if they want to volunteer or if they need the service. And then before we close, I want to bring our other guests back in to have an unscripted conversation, because there's a theme here. And the theme is about equity and access. And I want to get Ken Charles and Melanie's feelings about it, because you're all doing different elements of the same work. And I think it's important that we...
If folks are interested in learning more, whether they want to volunteer with us, and it could be, from an hour a week to, 7 hours, people donate differently. The first is the senior linkage line. The phone number is 800-333-2888. 2433. On our website, there's a tab called Get Help, and there's a tab called Volunteer. So folks can find ways, whatever, if they need to find some assistance or they want to lend a hand. It's trellisconnects.org.
I asked my other guests their personal stories. You mentioned yours a little bit, being in a communities of color household. What's your personal story, Jetta?
I grew up, Kentrell, I grew up in Des Moines. I grew up in Iowa, and my family is rural based. But when I was in middle school, my family brought my brother into the picture. And so he is, and right now, a 6'2" Arab American who was born in Beirut. And so he speaks fluent Arabic. And I always tell people our holidays are just a little bit better because they have more great food at the table. And so I dealt with a lot of racism and discrimination as a child and understanding. I loved my family, but sometimes they didn't get it. And so I evolved and moved here in the Twin Cities and went to graduate school. And I have a degree in public policy here. And, I've worked in nonprofit my whole life. And I've worked with foster care, and I've worked with babies at March of Dimes. I was executive director there. I worked in treatment facilities for drug and alcohol treatment. And about a year and a half ago, I had this epiphany of I've done babies and children and adults, and now I need to work with seniors. So I'm going to, my personal model is I'm built to serve. And so I'm hoping to serve. And so that my parents who are Caucasian have the same services as my grandparents who are now immigrated here, and they don't, Arabic is their language. And I have pieces of that language and pieces of that culture, but it's because of our bringing together of two families, right? So it's just a different way, and that's kind of how I got into this field of serving and giving myself. So that anyway, talking about volunteers is one of my favorite opportunities because it's just kind of who I am.
How has the George Floyd phenomenon impacted you personally, your work, your environment? I think all of us in some way or another are reacting to looking at our society, our city differently because of that. I think it's a good thing that we are being introspective.
Yeah.
And that we are determining how we change. But how has that affected you and your work? And I'll ask Kentrell and Melody the same question.
I live about 2 miles away from George Floyd Square, and I'm a block leader. And during that entire time, our block was on high alert, right, and communicating. And my staff, my team, there's 9 of us, and I would say 70% are BIPOC, LGBT. We are individuals who are incredibly impacted through this process. And as a manager, I've been managing through trauma. Right. People are experiencing it different ways. Some people bounce back like Jello, and other people it pervades who they are. So we've had to step back in our world and make sure that our 70 volunteers are okay. Right. How are they doing? And we worked, immediately into COVID too. That was a big trauma piece. But I think that it's changed in how we care about folks, and we're seeing folks. And I grew up in a community a little bit different, and maybe of how I look versus I feel. But supporting my staff and my teammates and my community have been more in the forefront for the last year than it had before. And it feels good to talk about pain and talk about how I don't feel good about where I'm living and what I need. And our team has been asking for services and asking for how do we feel better in our own skins, in our own world, in the work that we do to serve seniors. So it's been a very conscious, intentional conversation at my organization.
Kentrell, what about you, man? George Floyd, how's that impacted you personally, your work, your vision of community? And add to that the pandemic. How do those two phenomena shape, impact, inform your world, your work? You got about a minute.
Me personally, it really just exemplified what we've always been saying about our treatment with police. Seeing someone who looks like me die on camera, and it took the whole state government to get behind the prosecution to make sure the right outcome took place says a lot about our justice system, that it had to go that far and get that much people with power in it to make sure that the right outcome came out. As far as my team, most of my team is also folks of color. So it really impacted us too, of how do we interact with folks who are, because we have to also interact with folks, law enforcement people. So it really shook us up, and it took time for us to, everybody come through their feelings. We also have people who, some of my staff live in the communities over north and south where they were directly affected. So it was a tough time. And again, with COVID on top of it, you just see now all the stuff that, people of color have been saying for a long time has really been highlighted now to the point where it's hard for folks to look away from it now. So
Melanie, I got 30 seconds. Your reaction quickly.
So obviously, that was a very impactful experience for not only myself, everybody at the hospital, all of COVID, all of the violence that ensued following the George Floyd murder. All of that just greatly impacted our world in the hospital, and just, I think, really opened our eyes that we need to do even more than we thought we were previously doing to help support our community.
I got to cut it off right there. Listen. Thank you so much, Melanie, Smalley, Kentrell, Galloway, Jetta, Wiedemeyer, Bauer. Thank you all so very much. Keep up the great work in community. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you on the ground, take the crown away from you?
Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with their bigotry? Teach you that you're born to lose.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
of all the rules you break.
We've had enough
of all the money you make.
We've had enough.
No more life at stake.
We've had enough.
This is a proclamation.
It's been 400 years and we're 400 late. Together we stand from state to state. Going back in time won't make America great. We need justice now, people won't wait.
Action, no more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
of all the rules you were breaking.
We've had enough
of all the money you were making.
We had enough.
No more life gets taken.
We had enough.
This is a proclamation.
Free or guilty,
It's gonna get filthy.
better believe. Just roll up your sleeves.
It's gonna get rough. It's gonna be tough.
We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough
Of all the rules you're breaking.
We've had enough.
All the money you're making.
We've had enough.
No more life gets taken.
We've had enough.
This is the proclamation.
We've had enough.
Trayvon Martin and Tommy Rice.
We've had enough.
Michael Brown and Eric gonna pay the price.
We've had enough.
Philando, Breonna, George Floyd.
What? We've had enough.
So many gone. How can we fill the void?
How can we feel?
We had enough. John Crawford, I know you've heard.
We've had enough.
Sandra Bland, come on and take a stand.
We've had enough.
Sean Bell,
Sean Bell.
what the hell?
We've had enough.
Freddie Gray, did you hear what I said?
We've had enough.
This is a proclamation.